Star Wars, Episode 4. A New Hope wasn't just another space movie. It was a production so cursed that the Sahara flooded on day one.
What happened to the plans they sent you?
I don't know what you're talking about.
George Lucas made a contract demand that became the worst business deal in Hollywood history. The lead actor wasn't even auditioning for the role. And the final cut was saved by a woman whose contribution has been largely erased from history. Today, we're exposing some hidden truths behind the film that changed cinema forever and almost destroyed everyone who made it. 1. The pittance that cost billions. George Lucas agreed to direct Star Wars for a massive pay cut. Just $150,000 instead of the standard director's fee he could have commanded, but in exchange, he made two very specific demands: ownership of all sequel rights, and more importantly, all merchandising rights to any products based on the film. 20th Century Fox executives agreed instantly because they thought Lucas was an idiot. In 1976, movie merchandise didn't really exist beyond posters and soundtrack albums. Toys based on films were virtually unheard of. Fox couldn't imagine why anyone would want action figures of space characters. That small contractual clause eventually made George Lucas a multi-billionaire. It's now considered the single worst business deal in Hollywood history. Fox lost tens of billions of dollars in potential revenue because they couldn't see 5 years into the future. 2. The opening crawl was physical. The famous yellow text crawl that opened Star Wars wasn't a digital effect. Digital effects didn't exist yet. The crew took a 6-foot-long piece of black paper, hand-lettered yellow text onto it, laid it flat on the floor of a soundstage, and physically rolled a camera backward over the paper to create the illusion of text receding into space. It was incredibly difficult to get the perspective and speed right. The whole thing looked amateurish in early tests. George Lucas's friend, director Brian De Palma, watched the rough cut and told Lucas the opening text was incomprehensible gibberish that confused audiences instead of setting up the story. De Palma helped Lucas completely rewrite the crawl into something shorter and clearer. His uncredited contribution saved the film's opening from being a disaster. 3. Peter Cushing's fluffy slippers Grand Moff Tarkin is one of the most menacing villains in cinema history. Actor Peter Cushing was secretly suffering through every scene. The Imperial boots provided for his costume were incredibly painful. They didn't fit his feet properly, causing blisters and cramping. Rather than power through the agony, Cushing simply took the boots off. He wore fuzzy carpet slippers for most of his scenes. The camera operators had to be extremely careful to frame him from the waist up and avoid wide shots that would reveal the most feared military commander in the galaxy shuffling around in bedroom footwear. One of the most absurd behind-the-scenes secrets in Star Wars history. Even the most intimidating performances can be built on a foundation of comfortable footwear. 4. Chewbacca's wet dog problem. The Chewbacca costume was constructed from real yak hair and mohair, which gave it authentic texture. It also created a nightmare. During the humid filming in Tunisia and on the hot London sound stages, the suit absorbed moisture and began to smell absolutely atrocious. The cast and crew struggled to stay near Peter Mayhew between takes. Mark Hamill once described the scent as a wet dog that's been rolling in garbage. The suit couldn't be properly cleaned because washing it would destroy the carefully styled fur. Mayhew had to endure wearing an increasingly foul-smelling costume for months. He never complained publicly. Playing an iconic character often means suffering in ways the audience never sees. 5. The faster, more intense direction. George Lucas was notoriously uncomfortable directing actors. His entire vocabulary seemed to consist of just two phrases: faster and more intense. He would repeat them endlessly without offering any additional context or motivation. The actors were frequently frustrated and confused about what Lucas actually wanted. The crew got so tired of hearing the same two instructions that they made Lucas a pair of boards with faster and more intense written on them. They presented the boards as a joke, suggesting Lucas could just hold them up instead of speaking. But there was real bitterness behind the humor. Many of the performances in Star Wars worked despite Lucas's direction, not because of it. The actors later admitted they had to figure out their characters largely on their own. 6. R2-D2 was a nightmare. The original R2-D2 props were almost impossible to control during location shooting in Tunisia. Radio interference from local Tunisian stations caused the remote-controlled droids to go completely haywire, spinning in circles, crashing into walls, occasionally just shutting down entirely. Kenny Baker, the actor physically, inside R2-D2 for many scenes, suffered even worse. The metal suit became dangerously hot under the desert sun. Baker often had to be literally poured out of the droid at the end of takes because he was so overheated and dehydrated he couldn't stand on his own. The production medics constantly monitored him for heat stroke. Baker later said playing R2-D2 was one of the most physically punishing jobs of his entire career. It's a miracle he didn't suffer serious injury. 7. A rainstorm in the Sahara. The very first day of filming in Tunisia was hit by the first major rainstorm the region had seen in over 50 years. Day 1. First major rainstorm in half a century. The sudden deluge destroyed several expensive props and sets that weren't designed to withstand moisture. It pushed the production behind schedule immediately and blew through contingency budget Lucas couldn't afford to lose. Many crew members took this as a sign the movie was cursed, that they were making a disaster that would ruin everyone's careers. The rain created a sense of doom that hung over the production for weeks. Looking back, it's darkly funny that a once-in-a-lifetime weather event struck on the exact day Star Wars started filming, as if the universe itself was trying to stop the movie from being made. 8. The secret voice of the spy. The voice of Garindon, the long-snouted Imperial spy who points the stormtroopers toward the Millennium Falcon in Mos Eisley, is actually a heavily processed recording of John Wayne. Yes, that John Wayne. Sound designer Ben Burt took archival recordings of Wayne's voice and ran them through a synthesizer, distorting and manipulating the audio until it became the alien's distinctive buzzing, clicking speech pattern. Most people would never notice, but it's typical of Burt's approach, taking familiar elements and transforming them into something completely alien. The idea that John Wayne, the ultimate American cowboy, is secretly the voice of an alien informant in a space opera is one of the strangest Easter eggs in the entire franchise. 9. Harrison Ford wasn't auditioning. Harrison Ford was originally hired just to read lines with other actors during auditions for Star Wars. He wasn't being considered for any role in the film. He was literally just a guy reading dialogue so the real candidates could perform opposite someone. But George Lucas eventually noticed that Ford's natural attitude during the readings, his sarcasm, his impatience, his "I don't care" energy, was exactly what Han Solo needed. Ford wasn't trying to impress anyone because he didn't think he had a shot at the part. That genuine indifference made him perfect for playing a cynical smuggler who doesn't believe in causes or heroism. Lucas offered him the role. Ford went from being a paid script reader to becoming one of the biggest movie stars in the world, one of the greatest accidental discoveries in casting history. 10. The Death Star had no guardrails. If you look closely at the Death Star sets, there are almost no guardrails on the high catwalks where characters walk and fight. This wasn't a creative design choice meant to show the Empire's disregard for worker safety. It was a budget issue. The production ran out of money to build proper safety railings. The art department simply didn't install them. The actors were told to just be careful while performing on platforms that were sometimes hundreds of feet above the concrete studio floor. It was genuinely dangerous. Several cast members later admitted they were terrified during those scenes. Modern productions would never allow actors to work in those conditions, but in 1976, safety regulations were far more lax. The Star Wars crew had to take risks that would be considered criminally negligent today. 11. Saved in the edit. The first assembly cut of Star Wars was reportedly a complete disaster. Slow, confusing, no sense of urgency or tension. George Lucas screened it for friends including Steven Spielberg and Brian De Palma. They were brutally honest. The movie didn't work. Lucas's then-wife Marcia Lucas stepped in. She was an accomplished film editor in her own right. She completely recut the final Death Star battle sequence. She realized that by rapidly cutting back and forth between the rebel pilots attacking the trench and the countdown clock showing how close the Death Star was to firing, she could create urgency that didn't exist in the original edit. Her restructuring of the climax is what makes the ending so thrilling. Many film historians believe Marcia Lucas deserves as much credit as George for making Star Wars a success. Her contribution has been largely erased from history. 12. The TIE Fighter Scream. The iconic high-pitched scream of a TIE fighter flying past is one of the most recognizable sounds in cinema. It's not what you'd expect. Sound designer Ben Burtt created it by combining a recording of an elephant's call with the sound of a car driving on wet pavement at high speed. He spent months experimenting with everyday objects and animal sounds to create what he called a used universe, a sonic landscape that felt lived in and organic rather than clean and artificial like most science fiction. The TIE Fighter scream is the perfect example of his philosophy. Take two completely unrelated sounds, layer them together, and create something that feels futuristic but also strangely familiar. Brilliant sound design that most audiences never consciously notice, but it fundamentally shapes their experience of the film. 13. Anthony Daniels' Freezing Nights. While Tatooine looks blazingly hot on screen, the desert nights in Tunisia were actually freezing cold. Anthony Daniels, who played C-3PO, had to wear thermal leggings and extra layers underneath the gold costume to prevent his joints from locking up. The suit was so restrictive that Daniels couldn't sit down between takes. He had to remain standing for hours at a time, agonizing on his legs and back. He later described the C-3PO costume as the most physically uncomfortable experience of his acting career. He seriously considered quitting the production multiple times during the Tunisia shoot. The fact that he stuck with the character through 8 more films is a testament to his dedication. But it also speaks to how much he suffered to bring that fussy, neurotic droid to life. 14. Han shot. First. The most controversial moment in Star Wars history happened decades after the original 1977 release. In the theatrical version, Han Solo shoots the bounty hunter Greedo under the table without warning. It establishes Han as a ruthless, morally gray smuggler willing to kill to survive. In the 1997 special edition re-release, George Lucas digitally altered the scene. Now, Greedo fires a shot first and somehow misses at point-blank range before Han kills him. This moral censorship of Han's character infuriated fans and sparked the famous Han shot first protest movement. Lucas claimed he made the change because he didn't want children to see Han as a cold-blooded killer. Critics argued it destroyed Han's entire character arc from selfish rogue to selfless hero. The debate rages on today. Han shot first has become a rallying cry for fans who believe Lucas ruined his own creation by second-guessing his original instincts. 15. The Lost Biggs ending. There's an alternate version of Star Wars that completely changes Luke's emotional journey. The original cut featured several scenes of Luke hanging out with his childhood friend Biggs Darklighter on Tatooine before Biggs leaves to join the rebellion. These scenes were cut to get to the action faster and tighten the pacing. But it meant that when Biggs dies during the final Death Star attack run, audiences have no idea who he is or why his death should matter. An alternate cut exists where Luke's grief over losing his best friend is the emotional core of the victory celebration, making the ending bittersweet rather than purely triumphant, a more complex, mature conclusion that Lucas ultimately sacrificed for commercial appeal. It shows that Star Wars could have been a very different film with just a few editorial decisions. So did you know the Empire's most feared commander was secretly wearing bedroom slippers? Or that Han Solo was just a guy reading lines who accidentally became a movie star? Which behind-the-scenes fact surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments. If you want more stories about the movies that changed the galaxy, hit subscribe. See you in the next one.